Hi, my name is Simon Howard and I'm a Fortify Solutions Architect for Micro Focus. So this video is all about static scan results from Fortify on-premise, how you can use them and indeed how you can get them. But first, before we do that, let's look at the ways in which you can perform static scans. So these are the four main ways. You can perform a scan using Source Analyzer either in a command window or from a script. You can do much the same from ScanCentral in a command line or from a script. You, if you're a developer, would typically perform scans within the Supported IDE. And a lot of teams will integrate scans with a CI pipeline and execute those scans from there as part of their normal process. Whichever way you use, this is what happens under the hood. Fortify takes your source code files that you give us and dependency files, and we translate those into NST files. Then we perform analysis on that using 8 analyzer engine using rules, and we generate some results. On the right hand side over there you see it says Fortify project results. Now that's a file, it's a portable file format, and you don't necessarily always generate that, as we will see now in the subsequent slides and demos. Before we do that, what's information included in Fortify results? So, we provide some scan statistics and facts, and here are some examples of what is included. We provide a list of issues found and the counts of those issues in the different critical, high, medium, low buckets. We provide a list of files scanned. We give you information in some of the tools, and notably in Audit Workbench, a list of functions and methods that were scanned. You, in a lot of cases, would want to know that. We provide you with statistics about the scanned code, how many lines of code were scanned, how many were found in the different files that were scanned. And we provide you with statistics about the scan environment, facts like how long did the scan take, what machine was it done, and so on. Then for each vulnerability that's reported, we provide specifics about those. So a description of the vulnerability. So this is a SQL injection, this is what it typically looks like in Java, and so on. We provide you with the events leading up to the vulnerability. So a lot of vulnerabilities have a series of things that happen, maybe where data comes into the application and then works its way through the system to the point where, say, for example, a query is executed. We provide you with information about the language itself. So what I mean by that is that, let's say a SQL injection in Java, you'd kind of like to know, well, how does that typically happen? We provide that in the description information. And also we provide, importantly, remediation advice, help you understand as a developer how to fix this issue. These are just examples, it's not all the information. Let's go on and talk about viewing Fortify results. So, there are several ways in which you can view results in Fortify on-premise. You could use the output from Source Analyzer. You could use the output in a Supported IDE. You can view the results within Audit Workbench, within Fortify Software Security Center. You can look at the output from a CI pipeline. You could look and use the output from the FPRUtility, a command line utility. Or, of course, you can look at results in Fortify Generate Reports. Now we're going to go and look at each one of these one by one. Okay, so one of the ways you can view results is in the output from Source Analyzer. So when you do that, what you're using is Source Analyzer in a command line or in a script. And Source Analyzer provides a number of options that you can use to configure a scan to do things different ways. Now normally with Source Analyzer you would output the results to an FPR file as shown in the earlier diagram, which can then be consumed in various tools. But you could just output to the command line as shown on the right in the screenshot there. What it does give you is a synced output to the command line or log file, because there's no vulnerability details or remediation guidance provided, which you normally would get in some of the other tools. And the typical usage there would be when you're already scanning on the command line interface or on a script, but typically command line here. And you just basically want to get confirmation if a particular type of issue exists, or maybe confirm that you fixed an issue. So let's go look at that. Okay, so when you install Fortify SCA, you get some samples included. And what we're looking at right now is one of them, which is a version of the WebGoat Java vulnerable application. And I've created a batch file which has got a series of source analyzer commands to do a scan. First it cleans a project, then it does the translation, then it does the analysis. So we're going to go do that. So I'm going to run scan, no FPR. It's not going to generate an FPR file in this particular case. And here we go. We completed the translation process and the scan. If I just scroll backwards through time, you can see all the results have generated, and you can see in this translation stage here, look, here is the files that were processed and here's the analysis part. So you can see a lot of output here of different types of vulnerabilities. There's no remediation guidance at all here or details of the different types of vulnerabilities, but you could conceptually use this output to work out if a particular vulnerability had been reported, maybe a SQL injection, for example, or if you had fixed one. So that's the output from Source Analyzer. So let's look at how you can view results within a supported IDE. So we have plugins available for several IDEs, including Visual Studio and IntelliJ. The plugins enable you to triage vulnerabilities, and it's designed for a developer. So this is the way you would do it if you were a developer, typically. You'll get remediation guidance, you'll get details about each type of vulnerability, and guidance on how to fix that vulnerability. The plugins also enable you to add comments to the audit history that Fortify maintains for each vulnerability, and some of the plugins enable you to create bug tickets in an associated bug tracker as well. All of the plugins offer a little bit less functionality than in Audit Workbench, which I'm going to show you shortly, but nevertheless, it is a very powerful interface that you're offered. Let's go look at that. So what you're looking at right now is the IntelliJ IDE, and I've loaded up the Java project, the WebGoat project that we looked at for the command line source analyzer method. And here we've actually loaded up an FPR file that is stored on a connected or associated, if you like, a Software Security Center instance. So vulnerabilities here now shown in this view, in this window over here. They're broken up into the critical, high, medium and low buckets, and I can look at each of those one by one, if you see what I mean. So right now I've selected a SQL injection that's in a file called backdoors.java that occurs at line 106. The area on the right hand side over here shows me the series of events that lead up to that vulnerability. So it occurs at line 106. If I select that, there is line 106 here. And from a developer workflow point of view, what we typically do is work backwards through this event history to where it started. Now each of these are links, and I can click through it and follow it through my code, and I can understand what's happening. Ultimately I'll get right to the start. In this case it's a SQL injection, and this is where the data comes into my application. Now SQL injections and what happens, what they will mean, is beyond the scope of this video, but I'm just going to quick highlight of that. SQL injections are all about data coming into a system, not being validated typically, and then a query being executed with potentially an injection happening. How do I, as a developer, do anything with this? So there's a details tab here that provides an abstract of what's happened. So data's coming from an untrusted source. I would typically read through this, the explanation that follows. I'm going to scroll through that. So you'd read through that, the examples. We always provide examples in the language that was scanned, in this case Java. So this is a snippet of Java code saying this is how you typically would have a SQL injection. Go through this, work our way through to the end. So there's lots of examples provided. Then you might think, well, how do I fix this? That's where the recommendations tab comes into play. So this will tell me typically for any vulnerability how I would normally fix this in the language that's been scanned. And I quickly scroll through this, but what it's basically saying in this case is I perhaps could use parameterized SQL statements, and it will give an example relating to one of the ones shown in the details tab, and I can see that's the changes I need to make in the Java code. Now, we're not showing snippets of code saying exactly how you will fix it in your particular code that you've scanned, but we're giving you guidance. So you'll read through that, some tips as well, and then you kind of all set a bit more now and to know what to do. Now we'll go back to the Audit tab. In the Audit tab, I could right now add a comment to say, let's say, definitely a problem, for example. Add that. That gets added to the audit history. There it is there. Also, there's a history tab that shows me through time the history of what's happened. Okay, that's it. That is the IDE interface in terms of results. I've not shown you in this video how to actually do a scan. That are shown in other videos on the Fortify Unplugged channel. Okay, let's look at viewing results within Audit Workbench. So Audit Workbench is a standalone tool that's based on Eclipse. And it's installed when you install Source Analyzer as part of the Fortify SCA installation. It offers advanced auditing capabilities, and for each vulnerability that is displayed, you can get information about the vulnerability itself, the details, remediation guidance, like in the IDE plugin, but more on top of that. More on top of what's available in the IDE plugins and in SSC. You can raise tickets, you can add audit comments, but of course you've got to learn to use a different client. Typical use case would be when you want to do advanced auditing, for example, creating filters. So let's go look at it. So here is Audit Workbench, and I've loaded a FPR file I downloaded from Fortify SSC. And on the left-hand side over here is a breakdown or a list of all the vulnerabilities that have been found. In this case, I'm just looking at the low-level vulnerabilities. Let's go and look at the critical ones. And there's a number of SQL injections. I'm going to select one of them. And here's a series of events that lead up to the vulnerability, which occurs on line 106. Central here over here is the code. These are links actually, so I can click through these and go to different places in the code and the series of events. Let's go back to where the query is executed in this SQL injection on line 106. The central area over here is where I can add audit comments or raise tickets. I can view details of each vulnerability like I can within the IDE. It's much the same experience actually. Guidance on how this type of vulnerability occurs with little snippets of code. Same text will be displayed in actual fact. Recommendations on how to fix this type of vulnerability. A diagram view showing this series of events in the code in form of data and execution flow, particularly useful if I don't know the code very well. And also there's a set of filters, which I'll come to in a minute, and other things as well, like the history view as well, to show the audit history. So one thing I want to show you is you can use a thing called Smart View. Now Smart View enables me to group together instances of different categories of vulnerabilities. So right now I'm just looking at the critical vulnerabilities. I could select all here in the drop down, and then I can see all the different categories of vulnerabilities across the whole of this scan. and I can say, for example, select SQL injection, and I can see all of these, where all the SQL injections are in my code. If I click on these, I will go back into Audit Workbench, and I'll be looking at a subset of the vulnerabilities. I'm going to close this list down, go back into Audit Workbench. Let's imagine I want to go and raise a ticket. So to do that, that's really easy. I'll select a vulnerability. We'll select a different one, just one that hasn't got a comment so far. And I'm going to select here. Now I've already integrated Audit Workbench with a bug tracker. So to actually go and to raise a ticket, I click this button here, enter the project. I mean, I've integrated it with Jira in this case, but it could be Micro Focus ALM. Select the type of issue. I'm going to say it's a bug. Everything else I'm going to keep as is. Select Submit. Defect has been created. I can now go to my bug tracker. I'll refresh this. And you can see the new one appeared. Select that. Here is the bug in Jira in this particular case. And it's been pre-filled with information that came out of Audit Workbench. So that's pretty cool. Let's close that down. Also, I can add audit comments. So I'm going to say a ticket was raised, which I just did, as you saw me do. I can also suppress issues. So let's find a low-level vulnerability, and let's pretend this hidden field 1 here. I'm actually going to suppress this vulnerability. So to do that, I click this here, suppress, and that vulnerability was now suppressed. Let's close that down, and let's look at filters. Now with filters, there are 2 different types. There are folder filters, which are used to categorize the vulnerabilities into the different buckets, the critical, high, medium, low buckets. And there's also visibility filters. A visibility filter, and there's one here already, which says if the vulnerability type dead code is found or occurs in your scan, then I want you to hide the issue. Let's go and create another one. So let's just do this one here, which is missing check against null. Now, so I'm going to select that, and I'm going to create a new filter. I'm going to say if category contains missing check. I'm just using this purpose to make it easy to find. There it is, against null. Then my choice here now is I can either hide the issue or I can recategorize it in a different bucket. So I'm going to leave it as is, and I'm actually going to hide it. I'm going to auto-hide it. So click Save. It's gone now, and here's my new filter. Of course, I can edit it later, or I can delete it. So filters are an advanced way in which you can recategorize vulnerabilities or automatically hide them. Finally, or nearly finally, over here on the right-hand side is the functions view, which I can use to see all the functions that were found, or the classes, or the packages in my scan. And that can be quite useful to make sure everything was scanned that should have been scanned, if you see what I mean. And then now definitely finally, there's also a project tab. This has several parts available to it. There's a summary view with a handy sort of horizontal bar chart, a certification view, which is not uber useful in this particular case. And you've got a build information tab, which is really useful. That tells me within this view here what all the files were that were scanned. That can be pretty useful, just in case something was left out accidentally somehow. Also, there's an analysis information tab. This shows you a list of command line arguments that we use to scan the code. Properties, Fortify properties, that could be pretty useful in some cases. And all the rules that we used. So going back to the build information thing, one thing to know, it also tells you how many files are processed, the number of executable lines of code, and total lines of code that were found, and of course, when the source was last modified. So one other thing I want to show you is, having made these changes to the Fortify project, I need to upload them back into SSC, which is where it came from in the first place, so that the rest of my team can see what's been done. So to do that, I can go Tools, upload audit project. I'll just say save here for that because I made some changes. And as you saw, it had automatically uploaded the project because I'd already pre-set up the connection with SSC. That's it. That's Audit Workbench. As you can see, it's really easy to use and it's really powerful. So let's look at viewing results within Fortify Software Security Center, otherwise known as SSC. So Fortify SSC is a browser-based tool that enables you to work collaboratively as a team on scans and the results. It enables you to triage vulnerabilities one by one, in depth, details remediation information provided. You can add audit comments, raise tickets if you've integrated with a bug tracker like Jira or Micro Focus ALM. It's got a modern website interface and it provides advanced features, but not quite as powerful as that in Audit Workbench. Typical use case would be when you're working together as a team. So let's go look at it. Okay, so here is Fortify SSC running on localhost on my machine in this case. Normally it would be on a server, dedicated server. And I've gone straight to the audit tab view for one of the applications on my SSC instance. So in this view, I can see the vulnerabilities and I can triage them. Now right now I'm looking at the critical vulnerabilities, I think. Let's go reselect that. So yes, I am now. I wasn't looking at all actually. And I'm going to use the filter here just to look at the SQL injections. And there is the one we've been looking at, which is in backdoors.java line 106. If I select that, here is the code. And over here on the right hand side is my audit history, or I can audit this further if I want to, my history so far, and information tab. We'll look at these one by one in a second. And the left-hand side over here is the analysis trace or event history, as we've been talking about, that leads up to the vulnerability. So I can use that in much the same way as before. I can go through the code, go from start to finish of that vulnerability. We call that the source and sink. So I can add an additional audit comment if I want to for this vulnerability. It could be anything really. Obviously, for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to click Save to save that change. I can also go and raise a ticket. But let's imagine first what else you would do. I can go to the Info tab. I can see an overview of this vulnerability. I can see the details, the same as we saw before in the IDE and in Audit Workbench about this vulnerability. So again, snippets of code and examples. I can read through that. So just as powerful as before. We can look at the recommendations, how we go about fixing this type of vulnerability, in this case in Java. Can read through that. There's also some metadata information. This is advanced information, but this can help in all sorts of use cases, not covered in this video. Additional references out to the different standards that apply. And also a handy implications tab. What's the implication of this particular vulnerability? Let's imagine now, having gone through this, I actually want to go and raise a ticket. So to do that, I've already integrated this with a bug tracker, Jira in this particular case. Click File Bug, click Project, Bug, and then I can go and create this ticket. I can change this information if I want to. I'll say it's highest priority. I'll say Submit. Go to my bug tracker we've been looking at, refresh this, and there's a fourth ticket now being created. Now I appreciate obviously we've created the same ticket for the same issue. Here in this particular case you wouldn't normally do that, but I have here. Again, it's pre-filled with information about this vulnerability. I can also suppress issues. Let's go back, let's look at a different vulnerability in the low group. And let's go and suppress a particular vulnerability. we'll turn the filter off, and we'll suppress this particular vulnerability here. So to do that, just go up, select suppress, add a comment, let's say, click OK, and now that's suppressed, as you can see. And that issue is gone. If I want to, I can unsuppress that later on. So that's a very quick view of the triage experience in SSC. Remember, we're working collaboratively here, within a team environment. If you want more information on SSC, there are other videos on the Fortify Unplugged channel. So let's look at viewing results within a CI pipeline, or CI build, if you like. So Fortify has plugins for several CI platforms, including Jenkins, Azure DevOps, VSTS, TFS, and Bamboo. If you don't have one of those, you can still integrate with your pipeline, for example, with TeamCity, using the Fortify Source Analyzer commands. Scans are initiated from your CI project or build or pipeline, and the results are shown in different ways. On the right-hand side over here is the output from Jenkins, which we're going to look at in a moment. And often what you will do is you really just want to integrate with your pipeline or project and look at the results within typically SSC. With this approach, you don't get any remediation or vulnerability details. It's not designed for triage. And the typical use case is where you've integrated it into your process and you want to quickly determine what was the impact of some changes that I made, say, yesterday, for example. We have a bunch of videos available on Fortify Unplugged that cover the various integrations we offer. Do go look at those. For now, let's just go look at the Jenkins integration. So here's my Jenkins installation running on localhost in my case. Normally it would be on a dedicated server. And I've got two projects available. I've got one which is a Jenkins freestyle project which is performing a Fortify scan. Let's look at that. And I've configured the scan with a post-build action which performs a Fortify scan locally in my particular case. And I've set it up so that it automatically uploads the results to my connected software security center. So let's go back to look at that project. The two integrations point here for Jenkins are, I've got a chart, a normalized vulnerability score chart. It's flat aligned here, but normally you would see it going up and down. And I've got this Fortify assessment view. If I select that, then I see a list of the critical, high, medium, and low vulnerabilities. And what I can do, this by the way, this is for the scan that my most recent scan that I did. And I can, let's say I'm interested in one of these particular vulnerabilities. I can select it, and I get taken directly to that vulnerability within Software Security Center. And there is the vulnerability. And I can triage it in the same way that we talked about earlier in this video. So that is a typical CI platform integration. So let's look at viewing results using the FPRUtility. So the FPRUtility is a tool that's installed with Source Analyzer, which is installed as part of the Fortify SCA installation. You can run this utility from the command line interface, command window or terminal, or you can run it from a script. Now it provides, in this case, our use case here, statistics on scans in a few different formats, but actually you can use the utilities for different things, other things as well. It provides quite succinct output to the log file or to the command line window, hence there's no vulnerability information, as in details or remediation guidance, like Source Analyzer we talked about earlier. And the typical use case is when you want to get some statistics for a scan, wherever that scan was performed. That's a key factor. So let's go look at it. Here we're back with the WebGoat project as one of the sample projects. And to use this utility, there are a number of command line options available. I'm just basically saying I'm interested in issue counts for categories, and then here is the FPR file. So let's go run that. And there you go. So you can see there's absolutely no remediation advice or low-level details given, but I do get some key stats of the vulnerabilities we've found. In this case, I'm specifying them by category, so straight away I can see, there are 50 issues of the system information leak type, internal, and I can see exactly where they are in the source code as well, and that can be quite useful for me. In this particular case, there's a lot of vulnerabilities, are in total, nearly 1,200 issues, so bear in mind, it's not designed for triage, but it's good to get an idea of the stats of vulnerabilities found in a particular scan. So that's the FPR utility. There are different ways of using that tool. So let's look at viewing results within reports that have been generated by Fortify. So you can generate reports in several ways, from Audit Workbench, from Fortify Software Security Center, or using some command line tools. Reports are configurable, and they can contain the level of detail that you require. And the benefit of using this approach is that you can share those reports with stakeholders, either internally within the organization or potentially vendors that maybe are developing code for you. And the typical use case would be when you want that portability, where you can share those results. So let's look at some reports. So this is Audit Workbench, as we looked at earlier, and we're still looking at our WebGo project, or a WebGo project. And let's go and generate a report. So I'm going to generate a BERT report, and I'm going to make it the OWASP top 10. And there's several templates available. Actually, I'll show you that to you. We can go, CW top 25, whatever. We'll stick with OWASP top 10. As detailed report, I'm going to include some terminology that's used. I'm going to generate in PDF, but it could be in XLS doc or HTML otherwise. Keep PDF, and I'm going to put it in this location here, which is in the folder we've been looking at in this video. Click Generate. Okay, it's been generated. Let's go to that folder. There is the report. Let's open that up. You can see some executive information, pretty useful. Breakdown in terms of the A1 through to A10 categorization. More information about rules. Further issue breakdown, A1 through to A9. And you can see this is a pretty detailed report. If I carry on going through this, fast forward a bit, you can see now we're starting to see some more low level information about each and every one of these vulnerabilities. If I carry on going through, you can see it's much the same. So that's a format of a report. Let's go generate a different one, this time from SSC. So here we are back in our WebGo project within SSC, and let's go to the Reports tab. To generate a report, I'm going to go New Report. I'm going to select Application Summary. It's actually already, no, I'll go for Issue Reports actually. I'm going to select Developer Workbook. There's different types of reports I can create. I'm going to call it Developer Report, WG App or something like that. Locate the application that I want to generate report for. Click Done. I'm going to keep it in PDF format, but here I've got choice between XLS or doc otherwise. Click Generate. And now my report is being generated. And there you go, my report has been generated. If I select this, I can now obviously delete it if I want to, or I can download it. I'm going to download it, and I can go look at it. similar information to before, slightly different presentation, nicer in a lot of ways. In this executive summary here, of course, notice that this is a different template, I should say, as well. But if you look through here, you can see that's a very nice little pie chart there showing a breakdown of the categories of vulnerabilities in my top 10. Carrying going through it. Breakdown in terms of the vulnerabilities and the buckets that apply. So these are the categories. These are the buckets. And now here is a breakdown of each of the vulnerabilities. So this is access control database vulnerability, abstract explanation, details, like we've seen before in the other tools. But as you can see, this is really developer level. This is a developer workbook. Now, there are different types of reports you can generate, as you saw. If we go back to SSC just for a second, I could have selected, let's generate a new report. I could select, I don't know, CW top 25. Let's do that. And you can see, if I were to generate it, actually, it would be a much lower level, a different level of detail. So let's do that. Select the application again, PDF, click generate. Okay, so my report has been generated. If I go look at that one instead, okay, so you can see you can generate reports in all different types of ways, including Audit Workbench and SSC, and in different styles. Okay then, so let's just summarize what we learned. So there are lots of different ways in which you can consume results generated by Fortify. You can use Source Analyzer in the command line or in the script. You can look at the results within an IDE, ideal for developers. You can use Fortify Audit Workbench for that advanced audit experience, doing things like creating filters. You can use SSC when you're working within a team environment. You can integrate with your CI pipeline, your ScanCentral CI pipeline, and you get some level of output of results there often within the plugin. In particular, Jenkins is a good example of that, but often you'll do the actual triage within SSC itself. You can look at reports. So different types of reports you can generate, and they give you high level information or low level if you want it that way for your developers. And finally, you can use a tool like FPRUtility, which is great for just summarizing the key stats for your FPR file. That's it. Hope you have found this video useful. I will see you in the next one.